It's 3 in the morning, and it comes out of the dark hallway. A long, mournful yowl, the kind that raises the hair on your arms. You're lying there, wide awake, staring at the ceiling, and you're sure you know what it is. She's lonely. Or she's being difficult, doing it on purpose, the way an old cat gets set in her ways. So you either call out to her, or you pull the pillow over your head and wait for it to stop. And here is the thing I need you to hear tonight. That conclusion, the one almost every loving owner reaches at 3 in the morning, is very often the exact wrong one. What if I told you that the real reason your old cat cries into the dark is almost never loneliness at all? And that once you understand what's actually happening, there are simple, gentle things you can do, starting with something as small as a nightlight that can quiet those nights and bring her real comfort? Let me guess what you're thinking. You're thinking, come on, Dr. Mei, she's just old. This is what old cats do. And I understand why you'd land there. But as a veterinarian, I can tell you the research is clear. In an old cat, sudden crying in the night is usually her aging brain or her thyroid talking a medical whisper, not a bratty habit, and the very first thing it deserves is not a scolding, but a checkup and a little light in the hallway. So here we are. Hi everyone, I'm Dr. Mei Chen, your neighborhood vet. And right now, before we go 1 inch further, I want you to drop the guilt at the door. If you've been frustrated with her, if you've snapped quiet into the dark and then felt terrible, that doesn't make you a bad pet parent. It makes you a tired human who was never told what those cries actually mean. Nobody handed you the answer. That's what tonight is for. So grab a notebook, hit subscribe to join our pet parent community, and stay with me. Because by the time we're done, you're going to hear that midnight yowl completely differently, and you're going to know exactly what to do about it. Quick note before we really start. I'm a veterinarian sharing general information to help you care for your cat, but I'm not your cat's vet, and this is not a diagnosis. Every animal is different. For anything specific, and before you change your cat's food, routine, or anything else, talk to your own vet. And this one matters more than usual, so I'm going to say it plainly. An old cat who suddenly starts crying at night needs to be seen. Not eventually. Soon, because as you'll hear in a moment, the most common reasons behind those cries are medical, and several of them are very treatable, but only if someone finds them. So, please, take everything I say today as the reason to make that appointment, never as a replacement for it. Especially if your cat is older, on medication, or already has a health condition. Okay, now let's get into it. But first, you have to understand one thing. Because if you get this wrong, none of the rest will make sense. And it's this. Loneliness almost never makes an old cat cry in the dark. I know that runs against every instinct you have. She's alone in a quiet house. The sound is so sad. Of course, it feels like loneliness. But cats are not pack animals the way dogs are. A cat crying out at 3 in the morning, over and over, night after night, in her senior years. In my experience and in the research both, that is her body sounding an alarm. Something has changed inside her, and she is telling you the only way she knows how. So instead of hearing, "I'm lonely," I want you to start hearing a question. What changed? Because there are a handful of real, findable reasons an old cat starts crying at night, and I'm going to walk you through the big ones, one at a time. Some of them are as manageable as changing a light bulb. Some need your vet. All of them are things you can actually do something about, starting tonight. So let's start with the one that surprises people most, because it's the one that gets written off as just old age. Reason number 1, her aging brain. Cats can develop a condition that is, in plain terms, a lot like dementia in people. Veterinarians call it cognitive dysfunction syndrome, and it is far more common than most owners have any idea. Here's what the research shows, and it stopped me in my tracks the first time I read it. By the time a cat is between 11 and 14 years old, close to a third of them already show at least one sign of it. Push past 15 and it's roughly half. Into the late teens, the numbers climb higher still. This is not rare. This is one of the most common things happening in old cats, hiding in plain sight, dismissed as her just being old and set in her ways. And do you know what the single most common sign of it is? Crying out at night, specifically at night. Let me tell you what it looks like from the inside, because this is the part that breaks my heart a little. Imagine waking up in a house you've lived in for 15 years, and for a moment, not knowing where you are. The room looks unfamiliar. You can't quite remember where the bed is or where the food is. It's dark, and it's quiet, and you feel lost in your own home. That is what a night with cognitive dysfunction can feel like for her. She wakes disoriented in the dark, and she can't find her bearings, so she calls out. Not from loneliness, from confusion. She's lost, and she's asking someone to come find her. I want to be honest with you here, because I promised you informed, not afraid. Cognitive dysfunction can't be cured, and I'm not going to sit here and tell you a nightlight reverses dementia, because it doesn't. But here is the genuinely hopeful part. So much of her distress comes from disorientation, and disorientation you can ease. This is where that small fix I promised comes in, and it really is nearly that simple. A nightlight, plug a soft one into the hallway, near her food, near her bed, along the path she travels at night. When she wakes confused in the dark, a little light gives her eyes something to grab onto, a landmark, a way to find the room again. I have watched this one small change quiet a cat's nights in a way that feels almost like magic, though it isn't magic, it's just mercy. On top of the light, keep her world predictable. The food bowl in the same spot, the bed in the same spot, the litter box where it's always been, easy to reach, never moved. A confused brain leans hard on routine, and everything that stays the same is one less thing for her to feel lost about. A calm, consistent bedtime, a little wind down, the same each night helps too. None of this cures the underlying condition. All of it can make her nights softer. And your vet, by the way, has more tools for this than you might think, from diet to supplements to, in some cases, medication. So this is very much a conversation worth having, not a shrug worth giving. Now take a breath, because reason number 2 is the one I most don't want you to miss, since it's so treatable when it's caught. Her thyroid. In older cats, one of the most common medical problems there is happens to be an overactive thyroid gland. Vets call it hyperthyroidism, and it typically shows up in cats around 12 and up. Here's what it does in plain English. The thyroid is like the gas pedal for the whole body's metabolism. When it goes into overdrive, it's as if someone pressed that pedal to the floor and it got stuck there. Her whole system revs too high. And a cat whose engine is running that hot doesn't rest well. She gets restless, wound up, wired. She paces, she can't settle, and she cries loudly, often at night, when the house has gone still and there's nothing to burn all that revved up energy on. In fact, this restless nighttime yowling is so classic that it gets mistaken for dementia all the time, even by loving, attentive owners. The two can look almost identical from the hallway. That's exactly why you can't sort this out by guessing, and you shouldn't try to. Here's the good news, and it's real good news. Hyperthyroidism is found with a simple blood test, and it is very treatable. There are several proven ways to manage it, and cats often improve dramatically. Once it's under control, the crying settles, the pacing eases, the weight starts to come back. But nobody can treat what nobody has found, which is the whole reason I keep pushing you toward that appointment. And that leads straight into reason number 3, because these next ones often travel together: high blood pressure. Cats get it just like people do. And in an older cat, it's very often riding along with something else, frequently that same thyroid problem, or trouble with the kidneys. When blood pressure climbs too high in a cat, it can make her feel genuinely unwell and disoriented, and yes, it can add to the nighttime crying. But here is the part that makes high blood pressure so important to catch, and I want you to really hear this one. It can quietly damage her eyes. When the pressure gets high enough, the tiny blood vessels in the back of the eye can give out, and a cat can actually lose her sight, sometimes suddenly, sometimes overnight. And a cat who can't see well in a dark and silent house is a frightened, disoriented cat who cries. Now, I'm not telling you this to scare you. I'm telling you because it's one of the best arguments there is for the thing I keep coming back to. A blood pressure check is quick, it doesn't hurt her, and catching high pressure early can protect the very eyesight that keeps her oriented and calm. This is not the expensive upsell talking. This is the cheap, quiet check that can save her sight. Which brings me to reason number 4, and it's a gentle, aching one. Her senses are fading. Just like us, old cats slowly lose sharpness in their eyes and their ears. And a cat who is going deaf, or whose vision has dimmed, gets cut off from the world in a way that's easy to forget. Think about it from her side. She wakes in the night. She can't see the room clearly anymore, and she can't hear you breathing in the next room the way she used to. As far as her fading senses can tell, she is completely alone in the dark. So she cries out into that dark, not because she's lonely in the way you feared, but because she genuinely cannot find you, and calling is the only way she knows to reach across the silence. There's a special tenderness to helping this cat, and it costs almost nothing. That nightlight does double duty here, giving her dimming eyes a little more to work with. And if her hearing is going, you can go to her instead of calling for her a gentle touch, letting her feel the vibration of your footsteps coming, so she knows she's not alone. For a cat who's losing her senses, your calm, findable presence is the whole medicine. I want to stop here and tell you where a lot of this comes from for me, because it isn't only textbooks. Years ago, I had a neighbor named Harriet, an old woman with an even older cat, 19 years old, a thin gray thing who paced that hallway and cried every single night. Harriet had convinced herself the cat was pining, lonely, maybe grieving the quiet house. She was heartbroken over it, and honestly, a little worn down by the sleepless nights. And when we finally sat down and talked it through the vet check, the light, the routine, she called me a week later, and I'll never forget what she said. She said, she wasn't lonely. She was lost in her own house, and a single nightlight brought her home. That stayed with me for years, because it's so often the truth of it, not lonely, lost. And a little light, and the right checkup, can bring her home. Now, I did promise you honesty, and there's one more piece I owe you, because it's real and it would be dishonest to skip it. Sometimes, the crying is a habit. And here's the uncomfortable part. Sometimes she trained you. Picture how it goes. Weeks ago, she cried at 3 a.m, and you, half asleep and desperate for quiet, got up and put a little food in her bowl. It worked, she quieted down. And a cat is a brilliant little learner, she filed that away. Cry at 3, human gets up, food appears. So now she does it every night, because as far as she's concerned, it works. And when you give in again to make it stop, you're not being cruel, you're being kind and exhausted, but you are teaching her to keep doing it. Here's how you tell this apart from the medical stuff, and this is important. A learned food demand is usually a cat who's been doing it a good while, who's otherwise thriving eating well, holding her weight bright and normal by day. Whereas a cat who suddenly, out of nowhere, starts crying at night in her senior years, that is the one you assume is medical first, and you get her checked before you assume anything about habits. Let me say that clearly, because it's the honesty beat that matters most today. In an old cat with new nighttime crying, medical comes first, always. You rule out the brain, the thyroid, the blood pressure, the eyes and ears with your vet before you ever decide, oh, she's just doing it for attention. Get that order wrong, and you can miss something very treatable. And even once you know it's a habit, the fix isn't scolding her at midnight. It's a small late meal right before you go to bed so she's not truly hungry. And then, as best you can, not rewarding the 3 a.m. concert with food or a fuss so the lesson slowly unwinds. That's the honest, complete picture. I won't hand you half of it. So let me pull all of this together into what you actually do, because I don't want you leaving with just worry. I want you leaving with a plan. The single most important step, the one that comes before everything else, is the senior checkup. When you take her in, the 3 things worth asking your vet about are simple to remember: blood work, blood pressure, and a thyroid check. That trio catches most of what we talked about today: the thyroid, the pressure, the kidney clues, and it's the difference between guessing and knowing. I'm not going to walk you through every senior illness under the sun today, because that's its own conversation, and I've covered the wider senior picture elsewhere. Today is about the crying and about getting her looked at. Then, at home, you stack the gentle comforts on top: a soft night light along her nighttime path, so she's never lost in the dark; a warm, easy to reach bed she doesn't have to climb or work for; that small late meal before bed; and her litter box and water within easy reach at night, close by, never across the cold, dark house, because an old cat who has to travel too far in the dark is an old cat who'll cry about it, and fairly so. A steady, predictable routine ties it all together. None of that is expensive. Most of it is a light bulb, a bowl, and a little rearranging. And here's the thing that quietly makes me angry about how pet care often goes. So much of it pushes you toward the priciest end of everything, the big panel and the worried parent upsell, when the truth is that the most powerful things on today's list are a nightlight and a good, honest exam. Nobody's getting rich telling you to plug in a nightlight. That doesn't make it any less true. Your own good vet is your ally in this, not the enemy that senior workup genuinely is worth every dollar. It's only the fear and the upsell machine I want you to be wise about. Informed, not afraid. So let's bring it home and take a picture of this screen so you have it. When your old cat cries at night, it is almost never loneliness. Reason 1 is her aging brain cognitive dysfunction, and a nightlight plus a rock-steady routine can ease the confusion. Reason 2 is her thyroid, so treatable once a blood test finds it. Reason 3 is high blood pressure, often tied to the thyroid or kidneys, and catching it can even save her sight. Reason 4 is her fading senses, and your findable, gentle presence, plus that same nightlight, is the comfort. And the honest fifth possibility is a learned food demand, but only after your vet has ruled the medical causes out. Because in an old cat with new crying, you always assume medical first. The plan is a senior checkup: blood work, blood pressure, thyroid, then a nightlight, a warm, easy bed, a small late meal, and food, water, and litter within easy reach. That's the whole masterclass. She isn't giving you a hard time, she's having a hard time, and now you know how to help. Next time, I'm going to walk you through the quiet, hidden signs of pain in an older cat, the ones they're built to hide from you until it's almost too late, and the small changes at home that bring them real relief. It's the natural next step after today. Remember, you don't have to be the perfect pet parent. You just have to care enough to learn, and you clearly do, or you wouldn't have stayed with me all the way to the end. Give your best friend a scratch under the chin for me. Because the best medicine was never the most expensive. It's the love you already give them every single day. I'm Dr. Mei Chen. I'll see you next time.